Hi all, this is N.E.W. I am going to be talking to you today about organs to elements. I would recommend taking notes and highlighting key vocabulary, highlighting things that I repeat a lot. Um, but no worries if you don't get it all down because this video will be available on your science resource page, as well as Quizlets that you guys will be developing today and key vocabulary list. So just a brief review, we're going to look at the system of order again, because again, I want you guys to really kind of tie together things that you can see to things that you can't see. So a person is made up of a digestive system. The digestive system is made up of specific organs and structures, and then those structures are made up of specific structures, and so on and so on. And as we kind of really covered a lot in our digestive system lab, all organs have a specific structure and function, and really the structure aids in the function. So, as we saw with the small intestines being made out of nylon for our simulated lab, that really did represent what the function of the small intestines is, which is absorption. So, the leaking nylons. Was very different. The structure of that organ and the material it was made up of is very different than the stomach, which was meant to not allow anything to leak. And I really wanted you guys to kind of grasp that the plastic bag was essential. I mean, if you guys had stomachs that were all allowing things to leak out, the rest of your organs would corrode from the acids that are in your stomach. So really, again, honing in on the fact that every organ is structure is really made up that way for a particular reason. And then what makes up those organs are the tissue. And so tissue is literally the fabric of all of our organ systems. And each tissue, again, has a specific structure and function. You guys will keep on hearing this, structure and function. So looking at what that organ is and what that purpose of that organ is will really determine what kind of tissue that organ is made up of. I like using the analogy that tissue is kind of like material, and you really wouldn't be using armor to do yoga, right? So, again, repetitive, but I hope you guys understand. If you're going to be doing yoga, you're going to want to wear material that's stretchy and tight fitting, versus if you're going out to battle, you're going to wear something hard. And kind of looking at what is the purpose of this activity and what is the best thing to wear for it. Same idea with tissue. And there are 4 types of tissue in the human body. And I'm not really going to go into much detail about it because that's something you will cover in anatomy and physiology. But I do want you guys to understand that there are 4 types, and they are called connective tissue, epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And I do want you to know the 4 different types. I do want you to understand that every human body has all 4 different types, and not every organ is made up of all 4 different types. So you're going to see a lot more nervous tissue in your brain and down your spinal cord, whereas our skin is epithelial tissue. And that epithelial tissue can vary depending on where it's located because, again, our skin on our outside is epithelial, but also the lining of our stomach and small intestines is also epithelial. And of course, just like anything else, all of those tissues are made up of something. And so the tissues are made up of cells. So kind of going back to our analogy on tissue being the fabric of our organ systems, cells are really the thread that makes up our organ system. So if you're looking at that purple slide, all those little black dots are representing the nucleus of those cells, because that's actually what gets dyed when we're doing gram stains. But you can see how many cells are actually making up that slide of tissue. On the other picture, that is actually a single cell representative, and it has all the organelles, which we'll go into in a little bit, labeled. But and again, just kind of like our real good stormtroopers, each cell is an individual unit of life, just like each stormtrooper is an individual unit of life. But it's really about how those cells work together that makes up the tissue and gives it a specific function. And just like our stormtroopers, each one of those might have a specific function. If you've seen the latest Star Wars, right, you have the mechanic stormtroopers, and then you have the battle stormtroopers, and and you wouldn't send the mechanic stormtroopers over to the hospital to take care of, with the medic stormtroopers. So really assigning the right series of cells to the right organ or tissue. And like I just said, with each stormtrooper being a single unit of life, every cell is a single unit of life. And that means that every cell has what it takes in order to live. And that means it needs to be able to metabolize, it needs to be able to reproduce. And it's going to do that because it's filled with organs, just like you and I are. So all cells have organs, and I want you to pay attention to what they are called. So just like our human body has our digestive system, our brain, our reproductive system, the cell has very similar structures within. So mitochondria, cytoplasm, Golgi body apparatus, ribosomes, nucleus, vacuoles, lysosomes, and we'll go over the organelles as they come across. I don't want to force you guys into rote memorization of all the organelles, but I do want you guys to understand that the cell is filled with organs. So organelles, again, all have a specific structure and function. So the nucleus, being like the brain of the cell, is very similar to our brain, and its structure has a enclosed membrane in order to protect the DNA within, just like our brain has an enclosed membrane of our skull. So much like our organs that all have a specific structure and function, our organelles inside of each one of our cells have a specific structure and function. And yes, even our cells have an organ that functions like the stomach, lysosomes. Actually, lysosomes hold a lot of enzymes that were created by the cell, and the purpose of lysosomes is to digest things. They might be used to digest food or even break down cells when they die and digest the other cells around them. And all lysosomes need different proteins in order to work. But I would hope that you would realize that our cells that are making up the stomach and the small intestines and the digestive tract, those cells are going to have a higher amount of lysosomes in them because, again, that's part of their function, versus our epithelial cells on our skin, which are not going to have as much lysosomes because it's just not going to be necessary for the function of our outside skin. And of course, because nothing comes from nothing, all organelles are also made up of something. Sorry, I had to throw my Harry Potter reference there because really only if you're Harry Potter or a fabulous wizard can you make things operate out of nothing. But unfortunately, in our real world situation, that doesn't occur. So organelles too are made up of something. And they are made up of what we call macromolecules. And macromolecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. You will want to write this down. You will want to know this. And the first three probably sound really familiar to you: carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. Nucleic acids is really just another word for DNA and RNA. And we'll go more into that later on this year. And just to be clear, when I say carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, I'm not talking about bread, oil, or chicken. So we're not just shoving a whole bunch of these large foods into your cells, but really what it is that makes up those items in particular. So the four groups of macromolecules, this is just another view of them: carbohydrates, nucleic acids, proteins, and lipids. And you can see with the carbohydrates and lipids where it actually breaks down what those are made up of. Um, you can kind of get a little bit of a pattern to see some of the elements. So we also are going to look at what makes up those four macromolecules. So a molecule in itself is just a string together of a couple of different atoms. And you can see what those atoms are, or also known as elements, and they're all in the periodic table because macromolecules too are made up of something. And so this is as far as we're going to go in this class, but the periodic table is all the single level atoms slash elements that make up everything in our Earth and outer space and whatnot. So these are the Legos, or the building blocks of life and non-living things. Um, and those letters each represent, but when you start stringing them together, they actually become molecules, or in our body, macromolecules, when they formulate specific lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. And really, there are only 6 elements that make up 95% of all organisms. And those 6 elements are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So you do need to know that. I want you to remember those 6 elements because those are the 6 elements of life. And that's pretty much saying that if you were to be given a whole bunch of Legos and you were only given 6 different types of Legos, you would have to recreate every living organism in the planet. And really, it's about how those elements come together and connect that makes up all the macromolecules, that make up all the cells, that make up all the tissue, that make up all the organs, that make up you and me and the puppies and the manatees and the Harry Potters in the world. And yes, those elements are made up of stuff too, but you would cover that in chemistry. So we're not going to go any further than that. So once again, I really want you to take home that we are all a system of order, and going from our human body all the way down to the 6 major elements. That is what you're going to be held responsible for, and looking at how all those system of orders are related. Hope this helps. Hope this was clear. There will be 2 other videos available today, one on organelles, one on macromolecules, that will help hopefully clarify some of those more complicated subjects. But hope you have a good day. Thanks.